Prisoners. Let's talk about it. So, Prisoners is a 2013 psychological thriller directed by Denis Villeneuve, starring Hugh Jackman, Paul Dano, and Jake Gyllenhaal. Off the bat, I really like this one. There's no way to not like a Denis Villeneuve film. His stories are always cool. You'll know him from Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, Sicario, and the upcoming Dune movie. And with that, let's move on to the good. It's a beautifully shot film. The visuals are just phenomenal. Its cinematographer is Roger Deakins, who you'll know most recently from Blade Runner 2049 with Denis Villeneuve, but also 1917. He won Best Cinematographer for both of those. He's a very accomplished cinematographer, and it shows in this movie. He is able to just make every scene pop, to put this style to it that is just beautiful, interesting to look at the very least. Filming in this movie is characterized by shadows for sure. The rooms just seem kind of scattered. They seem claustrophobic too. Every time somebody walks into a room, but also he constantly is putting objects in the foreground and using a focus shift, changing from one object to another or one person to another, and it really works to catch the viewer's eyes. Inside of the car, shooting through the windshield, but instead of a clear windshield or something, there's always muck in the window or something. You're always looking through mud. Everything seems blurred in this film. The next great aspect is certainly the acting. I mean, I loved both performances. Granted, I love both of these actors, but Hugh Jackman plays this doomsdayer sort of lumberjack type father. You know, he goes hunting, he has his beard and mustache, kind of speaks in metaphors or truisms, just a very life ain't fair kind of guy. And there's a line of dialogue that mentioned this. He's like, I don't know if it's gonna be a flood or a hurricane, but you always got to be prepared. And that's a funny line because the next scene, his daughter gets kidnapped, and he is certainly not prepared. But before we go into that, I'd like to talk about Jake Gyllenhaal's character because he is a very interesting one as well. He's our lead detective, and a bad one at that. Like, off of the bat, he's not a good detective. Granted, there's dialogue that says he's never had a case that he didn't solve. So it's a little conflicting there. In his dealings with the victims, he's a horrible detective. He's constantly on his phone. He seems disinterested, very casual for somebody who's dealing with a kidnapping, a double kidnapping. And Hugh Jackman tries to relay this information to Jake Gyllenhaal, and he dismisses him. He's just a very dismissive detective, and he seems to be going after the wrong parts of this puzzle the entire time. He also worth mentioning, he has this star tattoo on his neck, just doesn't seem to fit the character. I really like this. I think it was all written into it. He's kind of the antithesis of the Hugh Jackman character. But he's just very interesting and very well acted, and they have a handful of scenes where they go head to head, Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, and I love them. That's one of the reasons to watch the movie. Finally, another great aspect of the film is the plot. I mean, if you're into psychological thrillers, like who isn't, it's a twisty, turny, fucking great whodunit. It is a bit long, 2.5 hours, but you're interested for the most part. So the plot has its good and its bad. I was constantly entertained the entire movie. But when you look back at it, when you finish the movie and look back at it, there are parts that really didn't make sense and kind of were explained away with the writer's magic, you know? So anyways, with that, let's go into the bad. Now, there isn't a whole lot bad in this movie, but there is some, and it's tough to put your finger on. I don't think it's a very cleverly written film, specifically with the dialogue, but also in the plot. So there's one character they throw in, played by David Dastmalchian, and he is another guy who we think committed these kidnappings. The way that they explain his motives in the end doesn't make sense to me still. Also, it seemed a little lazy the way they dismissed it. Similarly with the ending, I won't give away who it is in the end, but the way that they do it, they don't give that character any motivation. They don't give any explanation. It's just kind of, there's no way you could have guessed who that character was. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, pulled the wool over our eyes a little bit, I guess. You know, they kind of just throw some stuff in there, and it's interesting and it's fun, but I don't think it's the most intelligent writing. So I guess that kind of covers most of the bad. I mean, it's mostly in this screenwriting aspect. It ties into the ending because I didn't love the ending, but there are really cool parts of it. So along with the plot and the ending, there are some really great moments and some parts in retrospect that you say, okay, that's what keeps it from being one of the greatest movies of all time. The little extra thought, or the lot of extra thought, it's the genius of storytelling that this movie kind of lacks. But everything else, the acting, the cinematography, directing, editing, It's a fantastic movie. It's very entertaining, and I have no doubts that most of you will love this movie. So anyways, with that, I'm going to give Prisoners a B+. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the review, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.